This conference will now be recorded.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, all. Welcome you all to the fourth day of Faculty Development Program on recent trends in photonics. Let's move on to our first session for the day, which will be handled by Dr. Srinivas. I would like to introduce our speaker. Dr. Srinivas is professor in ECE Department, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He obtained BSc Honours in Physics from New Science College, Hyderabad, and ME Integrated and PhD from IISc. He was a postdoctoral research fellow at Toyoshi University of Technology, Japan, during 1992 to 1996. His area of research interest is optical communications, in particular photonic integrated circuits. He published about 150 papers and guided 28 PhD students. He is a member of National Board of Accreditation (NBA). He was the chairman GATE ISSC Zone during 2010-2013. He is an active volunteer. Now, on behalf of Government Model Engineering, let me invite Dr. Srinivas to deliver his lecture on photonics integrated circuits. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to give this talk in your FDP. I'm very happy to take part. So I hope you have been having a very good time in this workshop. You must be learning a lot of topics. I hope many of you have got very much interested in these photonics now, more interested. So my topic is photonic integrated circuits. This is one of our areas of research in our department. So operationally, I would say the organizers may interrupt me anytime. If anyone has a question, you can please ask them in the chat box or somewhere. And of course, we can have a lot of time in the end for discussions. I think I take about 1.5 hours or so approximately, and we can have a lot of discussion. The organizers can call me on the phone also if there's any network problem or interruption. So this is a brief outline of my presentation. So I hope some of the earlier participants, earlier speakers would have talked about the photonics, what they mean by what we mean by photonics, and so on and so forth. I will take up more devices which are based on the light propagation in optical waveguides. That is a very simple definition of photonic integrated circuits. A lot of detail can be there, but we can say that devices based on light propagation in optical waveguides will constitute an important factor of photonic integrated circuits. We will look at many devices like passive devices, functional devices, active devices, etc. And a lot of applications like the applications to optical communications, to optical sensors, quantum computing, and so on and so forth, depending on the time permitted. So I'll put in between a little bit of work that we have been doing in our lab also, like integrated optical microring resonators, photonic band gap structures, optical MEMS, and so on and so forth. Just to give you my own dose of the photonics, so I will look from a communication engineer point of view. I give a perspective of a communication engineer point of view. As you know, photonics is the science and technology of using light wave particles for many applications. So from a communication engineer point of view, we do all these information operations. Just a minute, please. I will try to switch off my video so that you can conserve the bandwidth. So we do all these operations with light and information. Of course, as you know, in communications, information is central to the whole of communication. So we do all these operations with information. You generate signals, you can control light, you can transmit it from one point to the other. We do a lot of optical signal processing. You can display the information. You will have to store the information, which is slightly difficult in optics and photonics, and so on. These are all the various comparisons with electronics. So you know that electrons, which are used in electronic circuits, have a certain amount of mass. These are fundamental particles of nature, like electrons, protons, neutrons. In fact, you know that they are now categorized differently in terms of mesons, fermions, and so on. So electrons, well, let us just talk about electrons and photons. Electrons are somewhat massive relatively, and then they have a charge, and you use Fermi-Dirac statistics to study the electron devices. In contrast to that, photons have zero rest mass. When they are propagating, they have a certain amount of mass which you can calculate by h mu by c square. Then they don't have a charge due to which they are difficult to control. And we use Bose-Einstein statistics to study the photonic properties. That much about photonics, because I think someone would have already spoken about photonics earlier. So now let us go to photonic integrated circuits. You can say that photonic integrated circuits are analogous to electronic integrated circuits. In olden days, in the beginning of 60s and 70s, in electronics, we used to assemble all the components on a small board, breadboard or PCB, and then make circuits and systems. Analogous to that, we can make as many components as possible on a single wafer to form photonic integrated circuits. That is the basic goal of photonic integrated circuits. There are a lot of examples. Right now, there are many things which are commercially also available. Some examples of photonic integrated circuits are N by N switching arrays for communication applications. For a sensor application, we have worked on what is called a fiber optic gyroscope chip. I'll show you later on. And more recently, people have developed what is called a micro optical bench. All the optical components that you see on a typical optics lab have been translated onto a chip on a silicon wafer. So that is one of the recent development. Recent in the sense, not very recent. It is almost more than 20 years old now. Of course, the technology is still evolving. We cannot compare this with electronics technology. In electronics, we have gone much far ahead. VLSI, as you know, will incorporate thousands and millions of transistors on a small chip. In integrated optics, we are not at that level. But people talk about, just a minute, please. Sorry for the interruption. So we cannot compare with VLSI, electronic VLSI circuits, but you know that is what is called a functional approach, where if given a certain function, how best we can do with electronics or photonics is what is called the functional approach. As an example, if you want to do an image processing, if you want to do the Fourier transform of an image, it is a complicated process in electronics. You scan the image, you put it in a memory, you use algorithms like FFT to process it and finally display. It will take several cycles of operation. In contrast to that, in optics, you know, if you put the image in front of a lens, the front focal plane of the lens, and illuminate, at the back focal plane, you get whole image, the Fourier transform of the whole image at once, parallelly. So that is an example of a functional approach. So instead of making complicated circuits as in electronics, you can simply make lenses and some of the conventional devices and components to achieve a given function. Of course, that is only illustrative, but there can be a lot of developments. We can always compare photonic integrated circuits with bulk optical circuits. We can also compare and imitate electronic integrated circuits. Many things are possible. So this is an example of a photonic integrated circuit. It's called a lithium niobate modulator, optical modulator on a chip. So you see the top view of that, the picture, and you see a branching circuit. The double lines are all waveguides. I'll describe in a minute. And you can, if you launch the light in the input port, it can get divided into two ports. And at the output, you see a combiner. The light can be combined there. But in between, there are two arms of the interferometer. And there are the bluish ones are electrodes. You put the voltage on top of these electrodes and you can modify the properties of light that is propagating. For example, if you put an AC on these electrodes, for example, given RF signal, you can modulate the light wave with this. The basic principle of this is called the electro-optic effect. That means the refractive index of the material or the waveguide can change with applied electric field. So that's a basic idea. Of course, we don't want to go deeper into this, but but of course, if you change the refractive index, you are changing the propagation constant, because you have e power I beta z as the propagation factor, and beta into the length of the interaction is the phase shift, and beta contains the refractive index, 2 pi by lambda into refractive index. So you are essentially phase modulating the light wave, and by using this interferometer, you are doing the amplitude modulation. So this is a very good there are a lot of improvements of this. You can go for very high performance, high speed operation up to several 100 gigahertz or so, and it has got very good bandwidth. And because all the dimensions are small, you require very low voltage for operating, and many other features. You can see the insect where the cross section is shown. These are formed by diffusing titanium into lithium niobate, and then you put the electrodes on top of that. So in this discussion, in this seminar, I would not like to go into too much detail about the mathematics of all these things, but I would like to give you some illustrative pictures and their functionality. I will describe the functionality. So for those who are interested, you can go to the literature given at the end, and you can go into more details. And of course, for those who are more interested, I have my NPTEL course on photonic integrated circuits of about 10 hours, which contains all the mathematics of all these things. So this is another important device in photonic integrated circuits called the directional coupler. So this is top view, what you are seeing. There are two waveguides which are placed very close together, and there are two input ports and two output ports. You can launch the light into the input port and you can control the propagation. So the light can tunnel from one waveguide to the other waveguide. That's an important principle in this device. So if you don't put any voltage or anything, just because of the proximity, the light can tunnel from the first port to the second port. And then the signal that is injected into the second port can tunnel into the first port. So you have a bar state of the device. So S1 and S2 will become S2 and S1 at the output. And by using the electro-optic effect, like what we did for the previous one, you can effectively switch back. The light can switch into the second waveguide within half the distance, and it can come back into the first port within another half the distance. This is the bar state of the switch. Earlier one can be called as the cross state of the switch. S1 and S2 will become, once again, S1 and S2. That is a bar state. So this is the cross section, like what I showed earlier. Of course, the images are not, the units are not very good because of the PDF. So the dimensions are very small. Typically on lithium niobate, they are of the orders of a few micrometers. The gaps are also of the orders of few micrometers, 4 microns or 5 microns. Depth of waveguides of the orders of 2 microns. And if you want to fabricate these, you have to diffuse a thin layer of titanium, about 200 angstroms or so, and voltages are also of the orders of a few volts. So the fabrication will require about 1000 degrees centigrade for about 8 hours or so for the fabrication of waveguides in lithium niobate. So these are the various features of photonic integrated circuits. So the devices are based on single mode operation. So that it requires some explanation. I suppose some of you are familiar with fiber optics. As you know, fiber optic cable or fiber optic waveguide is a very thin glass rod containing a core of certain refractive index and a cladding of slightly less refractive index, typically glass about 1.5, and 1% change in the refractive index is sufficient to make a very good waveguides. So core can be 1.51 and cladding can be 1.5. And we operate in single mode. So if you want to make a single mode waveguide, if you want to design the single mode waveguide, you have to solve the wave equation corresponding to the boundary conditions and get the various modes like TE modes, TM modes, hybrid modes, vector modes, and so on and so forth. Various nomenclature is available. On the same lines, you can think of optical waveguides which are rectangular in cross section. Instead of circular, you have rectangular cross section waveguides. And of course, the materials are different. If it is a glass, it is once again 1.5 or so. If it's a lithium niobate, the diffraction index is 2.1. If you are talking about the silicon, it is 3.4. And of course, the technologies also are different. The way you need not diffuse, you can coat material on top of that, etc. So the idea here is, once again, we may operate on single mode. For most of the communication applications, to avoid the dispersion and all these problems, we have to work with single. You can manipulate, you can understand, you can design very well single mode structures. That is one of the important features of photonic integrated circuits. Of course, in some special cases, we can operate also with multi-mode waveguides, few mode waveguides, and so on and so forth. Alignment is an important problem that we face in optics. If there are many components on a system, in a system, alignment of them is very difficult and it's very critical. So this problem is avoided or solved by going for photonic integration, because all these things will be taken care of by lithography. When you make the mask, when you make the mask, you can create structures which are aligned. There's another important reason why we need to go for integration or the waveguides, because you can control them. Just now we have seen that by using electro-optic effect, we can control all these waveguides very well. And of course, I already mentioned that we can have very low voltage of operation because your small dimensions are involved. They can be very fast due to smaller electrodes and less capacitive effects. If you want to think in terms of circuit models, they can be very fast. And then lot of power inside waveguides. Even if you launch a small 1 milliwatt of power into an optical waveguide, the intensity is very high. So you can make use of special effects like nonlinear optical effects and so on and so forth. And of course, like in VLSI, you have all the advantages of bulk fabrication, small size, lightweight, and so on and so forth. These are the main features of photonic integrated circuits. So historically, you can say that invention of laser is an important milestone in modern optics. And along with that came all the other applications. That is starting about 1960s. The fiber optics, the optical waveguide theory, and so on and so forth have developed. And you can say during 90s, there's a lot of development in the technologies. In particular, optoelectronic devices have developed. And immediately after that, a lot of applications have started to optical communications, biomedical applications, and so on and so forth. This is broadly not only photonic integrated circuits, but photonics technology as a whole. But definitely, a lot of theoretical development has gone in during 60s on the optical waveguide theory. Then, after light matter interactions in 70s have started, and then a lot of applications in 80s. And of course, as you know, in 90s, the demand for bandwidth has grown and networking has taken over, not simply long distance communications, which were of the order in 1980s. In 90s, people have come to networking. As you know, all the wireless technology has developed and also a lot of demand. So how do we distribute all this information across different users has come. And so WDM, which implies wavelength division multiplexing, is an important development that has taken place in comparison with FDM and TDM and so on. So now, after the crossing of the century, people have tried to look at using only optical components instead of using electronics. In the earlier generation of fiber optic communications, and even now, you have transmit receivers which deal with a lot of electronics. You convert at any given node in a network, you convert the signal into electronic domain, do all the electronic signal processing like regeneration of the signal, etc., and retransmit. That is an important bottleneck because electronics is imposing the bandwidth limitation. Many of you know that light has got a very heavy bandwidth. It's of the orders of several hundred terahertz. If you say the light frequency is 10 power 14, you know fractional bandwidth is of the orders of terahertz. So that advantage is lost if you convert it to electronic domain. So all optical components is what are thought of nowadays in many applications. So just quickly to get around, I will describe a few optical waveguides. So optical waveguide is a basic interconnection element in photonic ICs. And you have passive waveguides components like branches, tapers, etc. You can make in optical waveguides. You can also create dynamic effects like thermo-optic effect, electro-optic effect, acousto-optic effect, nonlinear optical effects, and so on, and create dynamic devices like modulators, switches, etc. And of course, we are not dispensing off with electronics, but you can make a lot of devices with light matter interaction in very small scale. And of course, there are a lot of applications and necessity is there for optoelectronic devices. Of course, finally, the technology is an important factor in when it comes to practice, and you have to choose proper materials, fabrication techniques, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the different types of waveguides that you will come across in photonic integrated circuits. The most common ones being the buried waveguides. You diffuse some impurity into the substrate. These are all cross sections what you are seeing. You diffuse some impurity into the substrate and increase the refractive index. NF is the waveguide refractive index. NS is the substrate refractive index. Alternatively, you can also coat layers on top of the substrate and etch out unnecessary regions and make waveguides. These are all called channel waveguides. They look like channels and the light is guided in both. Suppose if you say XY is this plane in XY direction as well as Y direction, and Z is the propagation direction. Okay. Similarly, you have what are called the slab waveguides. Slab waveguides confine only in one dimension, in the depth direction. In the width direction, they don't confine. So if you take if you just as the previous example, if you see, if you don't use any lithography, but simply uniformly diffuse a whole of top surface up to a certain depth is the waveguide, which is called a slab waveguide, which can guide light in the depth direction. So you can convert a slab waveguide into a channel waveguide by creating additional layers on top of that. So if you got a thin layer of some other dielectric material on top and then etch out unnecessary regions, you get a guiding layer within the slab waveguide. And similarly, you can coat metals, and of course metals will cause some absorption, but still they change the refractive index below them, and you can make very good channel waveguides in the with the metal electrodes. So for most of the devices, for most of the applications, we need channel waveguides. You can also load the slab waveguide. You create a slab waveguide, on top of that you make some other material as a loading layer. So below the loading layer, the refractive index is different, and so it can guide the light. And similarly, you can also make voltage induced. You can put electrodes on top of that and then induce refractive index changes, and you can make waveguides. These are the different types. There are many other types depending on the technology. Just to look at the various technologies that you find, the materials and technologies. I have put one very old table. So on the x-axis, on the top, you have various materials like polymers, glass, then crystals, then silicon is important, which is not present in this. There are different technologies. What is called the silicon photonics has come into picture now. And you also have magnetic materials depending on the requirement and so on. And you have different fabrication processes, for different materials. And of course, some of them are well developed. Double circle implies well developed. Single circle implies some moderately developed, and so on. So you have deposition techniques like spin coating, vacuum deposition, chemical vapor deposition, polymerization, and so on. And thermal techniques, you can use diffuse thermally. You can use ion exchange between different layers. You can also use implantation, epitaxial growth techniques for semiconductors, and so on and so forth. That much about the technology, because I would like to go into more in detail into some devices. So let me show you some passive devices like power dividers, polarizers, mux, demuxes, gratings, lenses, and so on and so forth. I have orally described the principle of operation of optical waveguides, but not much mathematics. For those who are interested, you can go into the, of course, maybe we can have a separate seminar in some other context for mathematics of the devices. So these are all the various types of power dividers that you will come across. These are the top views. This is a Y branch, symmetric to Y branch. You have an input waveguide of certain width, output waveguides of another certain width, typically single mode, but it has to expand from a single mode to this region where the width is double. So the taper will not retain the single mode operation. For that's where we require a lot of design and careful analysis. And these angles are supposed to be very small because the refractive index differences are very small, of the orders of 1%. So this is a very interesting device both to analyze as well as to study, but it's also important from all applications. In fact, we need many branches, like 1 by 4 branches, 1 by 8 branches, which can be obtained by cascading such devices. And this is a symmetric, the first one is an asymmetric branch, this is an asymmetric branch. There's a bus waveguide from which you can tap a small portion of the light. Depending on the angle, you can get different amounts of light that you can tap. This is a symmetric 3 branch. So there are a lot of difficulties and problems in analyzing. For example, these corners you have, I already mentioned about the tapering. There's a corner here and so on and so forth. We have already seen directional coupler as an example in the beginning. When two waveguides are very close together, the light can tunnel across them. So you see, even though the refractive index is more in the guiding region and less in the outside region, the light can tunnel. Many of you must have come across total internal reflection. That's how many people describe light propagation in fibers and waveguides. But I would say that geometrical approach is not sufficient to describe light propagation in optical fibers and optical waveguides. We should not say that light is propagating by multiple total internal reflections. We should simply use electromagnetic theory to study light propagation in all these structures. So there are a lot of variations of the directional coupler. You have a joint, there is no gap. When the gap reduces to 0, you get this type of structure. The important feature of this is there are 2 modes in the intermediate region. And this is a 3 waveguide directional coupler. So star couplers are used in many applications, like in communications. Basically the function is to distribute the incoming power into many output ports. There's a mixing region where you cannot explain what is happening with the mode, and of course you can simulate this and you can study even geometrically how the light can come out and so on. Of course this can be fabricated easily. This is a passive device. You can also have a star coupler based on the reflection. At the one end you have a mirroring, you just cleave the end face or put some other material to reflect the light, and you can get a very good mixing in the mixing region. And of course it can be distributed uniformly. Of course uniform distribution is not an easy task, and you have to optimize a lot of things to get a uniform distribution. So we need a lot of polarizers. As you know, light is a vector wave, not a scalar wave. So there is a polarization. You have 6 components of field, 3 components of electric field and 3 components of magnetic field. All may be present in a given mode. It's not only transverse electromagnetic. Okay, so it's a hybrid. It's called a hybrid mode or a vector mode. So if you want to control the polarization, you want to kill one polarization. See, in conventional optics, you call it polarization, horizontal polarization and vertical polarization. In the case of waveguides, the correct terminology is modes, vector modes or hybrid modes. So I'm just using the conventional approach. If there is a TE and TM mode at the input, you can absorb one of them and get only the other one out. So this can be called as a polarizer. For this, you need to make an anisotropic material. So many materials like glass are isotropic. That means refractive index is same in all directions, and light propagating in any direction is same as the light propagating in any other direction, which is not true for anisotropic materials. Anisotropic materials will have different crystal structure, not a uniform crystal structure, and so you have light propagating differently. Many of you would have come across the double refraction. So you see different images when you tilt in different directions. So technically, you have a matrix for the refractive index. So the light propagation factors are different. You can absorb or deflect light into some other direction, getting the polarizer. Similarly, you can also coat some other medium on top of the optical waveguide, and you can create polarizers, or polarization controllers also can be done by applying voltages or controlling the properties of the top layer. In fact, you can say, you see, the lithium niobate itself is a anisotropic material. It has got 2 refractive indices, 2.1 and 2.2. So that itself is an anisotropic medium, and it has got different propagation constants in the same waveguide for TE and TM mode, and it can be very good. It has got many other interesting properties, not only anisotropy, it has got nonlinear properties and so on and so forth. So these are some examples of multiplexers, demultiplexers, conventional way of doing this. So you have, I am using gratings. In this, grating is a very important device in optics and also the integrated optics, and these are the gratings. Gratings are placed perpendicular to the waveguide, and light propagating in the waveguide is influenced by the gratings. So the incoming light from the optical fiber is deflected by this grating into different directions. If there are many channels corresponding to different wavelengths corresponding to different channels, suppose if lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3 and lambda 4 are different channels, the first wavelength can be deflected into the first port and all others pass through, and the second grating will deflect the lambda 2 and third grating lambda 3 and so on. So this is called a transmission type of grating. Similarly, you can have a reflection type of grating. The grating will reflect instead of transmitting. It will reflect, of course, here also, of course, here it is transmitting. It can reflect a particular wavelength, lambda 1 in this direction, another lambda 1, 2 in this direction, and so on. So lenses are conventional devices which are necessary in many applications in optics. You can also make lenses on the integrated form using waveguides. Here I am using the slab waveguide to make Fresnel lenses. So in order to make that, you create a refractive index which is variable like this. Higher refractive index, more width here and lesser width here. It is a pattern like other applications like antennas, etc. You have variable variation of the dielectric constant. Similarly, you can make lenses by making gradient index, refractive index. So you have a uniform plane wave input into this. Of course, it is guided in the depth direction, which can focus at a particular point. There is no channel waveguide in this case. So similarly, you can make the width variable instead of the length, and you can create what is called a gradient index type of lens, and it can also function in similar manner. So there are more types of gratings that you will come across in practice. I'm showing a simplest grating. Is one of the important uses of this grating is to deflect light into and out of the wafer. How do you couple light from outside to into the wafer is an important problem in integrated optics still, and gratings are an important components that are being used now. Similarly, gratings can be used to couple different wafers. There can be one circuit on one wafer, other circuit on another wafer. They can be joined, and you can create a grating in between to couple light from one wafer to the other. Like what I showed earlier, you can make deflectors using gratings. Then these are called the waveguide gratings. Within the waveguide, you have refractive index variation periodically. Many of you must have come across fiber Bragg gratings. Fiber Bragg gratings are gratings where you have refractive index of the fiber along the propagation direction variable. You can make periodic change in the refractive index along the propagation direction. In other case, in this case, it is not in this case. In this case, it is not along the propagation direction. Propagation direction is like this, and grating is in this direction. In this case, grating and propagation are in the same direction. So you can create a lot of devices like reflectors. You can change the mode. You can convert from the first mode to the second mode, etc. And in many lasers, they are used as a reflectors like this. They can also be used to filters. You can also create resonators by putting gratings across the waveguides. We have already mentioned about the lenses that can be made with gratings. So these are all the various applications or uses of waveguide gratings. So this is one of the commercially available grating application to a MUX device. This is called a multi-purpose device, arrayed waveguide grating. It has got several input ports and several output ports. Light is carried by any one or more of the input ports and distributed by this input slab waveguide across all these waveguide delay lines. So here the waveguides are in different lengths. So this is the smallest and this is the longest, and these can be designed in particular fashion to give you different lengths or different phase shifts. So these, when the light is distributed across this and it is combined in this output mixing region, only certain ports are active to certain wavelengths. So the idea can be explained by using the delays of these waveguides. So it is like antenna arrays. Many of you must have learned about the antenna arrays. If you give progressive phase shift to different elements of an antenna, you can beamform in any particular direction. In fact, if you make them dynamic, you can also form beam forming. Beam steering also can be done. Similarly, by controlling the delay in the waveguides, you can make the light fall constructively at any particular output port. Depends on the wavelengths. That's how you can make wavelength selective output ports. So the input, for example, in this particular case, I'm showing you, suppose if there are more 4 or 5 channels in this input port, they can all be placed at different points on the output ports. So there are a lot of variations of these AWGs have come now. You have many ports like 64 port, 128 port, etc., and also very compact. They have been folded waveguides and so on and so forth. So now I would like to go to what can be called as a dynamic devices. Dynamic devices are the ones where you can control the light propagation, and in particular the refractive index. Refractive index of these devices can be changed by using all these effects. You can change the by using the thermal. You can heat the waveguides and then change the refractive index. You can apply electric fields and change the refractive index. You can stress the waveguide and change the refractive index. You can apply magnetic fields. The light propagating in the waveguide itself can control the refractive index, and a lot of nonlinear optical effects also you have. So this is an example of a thermo-optic device. You have once again the interferometer. This is made on glass, and there's a Y-branch here. Of course, the angle shown is very large here. It is only very small. Actually, it is only 1 or 2 degrees in practice, because the light will leak out. It can escape from this waveguide if it is too large. That is a design parameter, design intricacy, you can say. Just a minute, please. It has gone to some other. Okay. Typically, in this example, the waveguides are made by exchanging potassium into the soda lime glass, and you can heater voltages can be applied up to several tens of volts to heat this. Typically, the lengths are of the order of a few millimeters, and so on. So electro-optic modulators, we have already seen an electro-optic modulator. I would like to mention one of these applications when the RF is very high. I can apply, you see earlier, this is the lumped electrode modulator where you can apply a DC voltage or a small, of course, DC is of not much use if you are doing modulation, low frequency. So the voltage is almost uniform. Light is terahertz, 10 power 12, and RF is very small, of the order of micro megahertz or something. Then there are a lot of, you can say effectively that this is a DC as far as the light propagation is concerned. So lumped electrodes have certain applications, and when you increase the frequency of operation to several gigahertz, then these electrodes do not operate as lumped electrodes. You must think of traveling wave electrodes. You must think of them as microstrip lines where microwaves can propagate. So there is a microwave propagating along the traveling wave and a light wave propagating in the optical waveguides. There are different propagation constants, different velocities, and you have to match them. And as a result of interaction of the light with the microwaves, you get a very high frequency modulators. And of course, you have to do the phase matching, you have to load matching, and all those things have to be done. So this subject where you combine light waves and microwaves is called the microwave photonics. It has got very important uses. I think Dr. Meena will speak about microwave applications in the next lecture. Just let me see. I don't know whether, no, I thought the organizers are calling me if there's a difficulty. Okay, let us go to electro-optic switches. We have seen the beginning to that you can control the operation of this directional coupler by using the electrodes. And there are a lot of ways of controlling the electrodes. This is called a split electrode configuration. You can very accurately monitor the voltages that is applied onto this, and you can also correct some errors that may arise due to the design or fabrication and so on. So in electro-optic devices, you basically control the voltage, and you can switch between different directions. Of course, this is based on the directional coupler. You can base on many other factors. So acousto-optic effect implies that you apply a stress field on the waveguide, and stress field or the elastic effect implies that you are changing the refractive index by applying a strain. So the sound propagation in crystals can be called as, the control of light by sound propagation in the crystals can be called as acousto-optic effect or elasto-optic effect. So basically what happens is the acoustic fields are all variables, periodic variables. That means this patch what you are seeing is a periodic change in the stress, and so periodic change in the refractive index. You can see the second figure. I have put electrodes. This is not really acousto-optic electrodes, but you can create acousto-optic effect by similar mechanism. These are called the interdigitated electrodes. You have alternative positive and negative voltages which create positive and negative refractive
Excuse
index
me,
change.
sir.
Like, yes, please.
Sorry,
Is there any?
sorry to interrupt. Sir,
Yes.
your slides are not changing. It is in gratings itself.
Oh, is that so? This is
Yes, sir.
electro-optic effect. Is able, you are able to
So we
see?
can't see that slide. We are still in grating slide itself.
Is that so? Oh, this is
Yes,
the
sir.
slide you are seeing. Is that so? Okay, let me see. This is visible now.
No, sir, it's not visible. Still in the
Just a
same
minute. Then,
slide itself.
oh, this is the slide you have seen already. Have you
Yeah, the
seen this
same
slide?
slide.
Okay. I think
Grating
what I'll
itself,
do
sir,
is,
no change.
you're not seeing now. Arrayed waveguide
No,
greeting is visible.
no, sir, no.
Then I will stop sharing and then once again share. I think there may be some difficulty due
Okay,
to
sir.
whatever
Okay.
reason. I've stopped sharing and you're not able to see any slide, I suppose, now.
Yes, sir, no, no, no. We can't see any slides.
Yeah, now all your alphabets are there, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to reshare the screen.
Okay, sir.
Just a minute. It is rotating here. I think it may be network problem somewhere, either here or there.
Class ready ஆகும் அது செக் பண்ணி பாருங்க கிளாஸ் ரெடி ஆகும் அப்படின்னு
So if it is here, I will have to log out and log in maybe. Yeah, the video has come. Now the screen. No, the screen is still rotating. Just a minute, please. I will try to.
Okay, sir.
Do you think I should log out and log in, or? So I think I'll do that. Oh, no.
Sir, can you just leave the meeting and rejoin? Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello. You are able to hear?
Sir, can you hear me? Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Now it's okay, sir.
And the slide has come.
Now it's fine.
AWG
Okay, okay.
slide has come.
Yes, yes,
Yes. Let us
AWG slide. It's okay. Now, right.
let us
Okay, you can
continue.
carry on.
I have already described
Okay,
about the
sir.
AWG. It is a multi-purpose device which is based on the different lengths of these waveguides. Okay, so they are delay lengths. In fact, in the modern photonics, delay lengths are very important in optical communications because we don't have memories. Hmm. Delay lengths will act as a short-term memories for many applications in modern photonics. So I am showing you some dynamic devices. So these are the thermo-optic devices. You heat the waveguide and then change the refractive index. Electro-optic devices where you put an RF on these electrodes and then you can create what can be called as a high-speed devices. You can combine microwaves and light waves in the same circuit. So these are electro-optic switches which are based on the control of light by applying electric fields to these electrodes. And acoustoptic devices are based on the stress-induced changes in the refractive index. This patch is an interdigitated electrode like this. Actually, there is a small IDT here which will induce a traveling stress wave along this direction, which forms a grating. So you can create a grating by using the acousto-optic effect. And this grating can deflect the incident light into different directions. Mhm. Similar, of course, this bottom one is not really acoustic device, acousto-optic device, but electro-optic device where you can create a grating by alternating positive and negative voltages, and you can use for any application like mode conversion and so on. So next is magneto-optical devices where you apply magnetic fields to change the properties of the materials. So materials like garnets, yttrium aluminum garnet, yttrium iron garnet, etc. will have magnetic properties. So you can change the optical properties
Excuse
of the
me, sir.
medium. Yes.
Sir, did you change the slide?
Yeah, this is now magneto-optic device.
No, still the same problem itself. The AWG, we are having the same slide AWG. The slides are not
Oh,
changing.
okay. Do you think it is due to some
Um,
network or just a minute? I don't know whether it is due to network. I think it is still rotating like this. So some features I should delimit. Do you think I should
Hi, sir.
Is it all right?
No, no, sir.
No.
Sir, actually, are you using the web?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
I'm
so,
browser based.
sir,
Hmm.
okay, so whether you have shared the whole screen or only the application?
Only the application.
Okay, sir. So then do one thing. Can you please share the whole screen?
Yes. Just a minute. But I have to stop
Okay.
this first. Is
Yes,
it
yes,
not?
okay. Yes, yes.
Yes, I should say share screen instead of.
Yes, sir.
Just a minute, please. I'm trying to share now and then we'll see what happens. No, it's still rotating. Do you think the bandwidth is not sufficient?
Sir, I think the bandwidth is okay. Something is wrong with a share screen.
So I think you should give me the presenter permission. I'm not able to share the screen. Hello?
Can you check now?
I'm just now, I have gone to sharing just the screen. Let me see. Do you think now it is shared? AWG?
No, sir.
Just a minute.
Now it is okay, sir.
Yeah, this is in screen share mode, not the application. Okay. Shall we get going?
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, this is okay. If you don't mind, can you put it in the full screen mode? The
Yes.
application.
Showing full screen, I
Yeah, now
suppose,
it
is
is
it?
okay, sir. You can.
Okay.
Yeah, this is okay.
Yeah, we are talking about the magnetic devices, magneto-optical devices. So basically, we have to use the magnetic materials where the refractive index, or not only refractive index, other magnetic properties, magnetic susceptibility, and so on. As you know, you have the velocity of light being controlled by both electric properties as well as magnetic properties, mu and epsilon. Both can be changed by applying the magnetic fields. So you can make many devices. If you want to control the polarization of the light and make use of devices based on the polarization, you will have to go for magneto-optical devices. So just one word about the nonlinear optical effects. The light that is propagating in the waveguide has got electric and magnetic fields associated with that. And we have seen that the properties of the medium can be affected by electric and magnetic. So the electric and magnetic fields of the light wave itself can be used to control the light that is propagated. Is there some other difficulty from my side? Are you able to hear some noise?
No
Hello?
difficulties, sir.
No difficulty.
No difficulties, sir. We can see the slide. Yes.
Okay, fine. I don't know, maybe some participants, of course, I know that you must have muted everyone. Okay, so the light that is propagating itself has got electric and magnetic fields, and the light can be controlled by those. For example, you can switch if the light intensity is beyond certain value, it can switch in one direction. If the light intensity is small, it can propagate straight without in a linear mode. Okay, so another example of a nonlinear effect is the second harmonic generation. You launch a light of the wavelength 840 nanometers and you get the light at 420 nanometers, double the frequency. So you can explain all this by going back to the basics or the material properties. The polarization, dielectric polarization of the material is given in terms of a series of electric fields E square, E cube, and so on through the susceptibility vector. So if there is a E square in P, then you have the second harmonic effect, and so on and so forth. If there are two or more frequencies, you have some frequency generation. So many other effects are possible by using the light that is propagating within the waveguide. So now I would like to go to a few systems, some integrated optical systems as an application to fiber optic communications, optical sensors, and so on. So this is a typical, of course, these are somewhat explanatory, not much difficult to understand, but of course not easy to design. Fiber optic communication system where you have 4 input ports and 4 output ports. I would like to choose light coming from one of the input ports to any of the output ports. For example, I'm launching the light to the third port here and I would like to get the first port. So I will put this in the bar state. As you know, in the beginning, like what I mentioned, you can put the switch in the bar state or cross state and program all these 5 electro-optic switches so that you get a proper connectivity. For example, if you put it in the crossover bar state and this in the crossover state, And this also in the crossover state, the third signal will go to the first port. If you, for example, another example, if you launch the light to the first port and put these three in the crossover state, you get the light at the output port, and you can do things simultaneously. You have a 4x4 switch array. You can easily guess that all possibilities are not, all combinations are not possible. You have to program such that it is, and you have to come out with configurations which will give you maximum connectivity. These are all the challenges in fabricating and designing the switches. This is something like in the early days of telecom engineering, you require very large crossbar switches and so on and so forth. So this is just an example, fiber optic communication system based on the electro-optic switches. So this is an example of an optical information processing system. So this is called a spectrum analyzer. So what you see here is a slab waveguide. First of all, this is a substrate, say lithium niobate. On top of that, you have a slab waveguide. By titanium diffusion, you can make this top surface as a slab waveguide. And then there are two lenses called geodesic lenses imprinted on this. You create stress-induced lenses. They are pressed with a strong hard object and you make two lenses. You can think of them as a depression inside the surface. And when you launch light through this geodesic lens, it can act as a spreader. You can expand the beam by using this lens. And the output lens can be used as a converging lens. You can converge this expanded beam like conventional bulk optics. You can converge them to some point in output port. And what I do here in this example is I create a grating here by using acousto-optic effect. I create an IDT pattern. This dark one is an IDT pattern, and you give an RF to this IDT pattern, say some high frequency like 200 megahertz or so, and create a grating here in between the lenses. So when there is a traveling wave grating here, it will selectively focus these signals across the output ports depending on the frequency of the input light. Suppose you have two different frequencies in the input light, they can form at two different places. Suppose there are two different RF frequencies exciting this grating, exciting this IDT, you have two different, for the same single optical frequency, there are two output light signals corresponding to the two RF frequencies. So you can use this as a RF spectrum analyzer, or you can configure it as an optical spectrum analyzer. So if there is a composite signal here, if there is a composite RF signal here, all the components will fall at different points in the output port. You can have a photodetector array and calibrate the amplitudes of this and get the spectrum of this RF signal or the optical signal. So this is a typical example of an optical information processing system. You can do many things. You have many ports under your control. The input light port is there. You have an RF port and so on. You can form, say for example, two signals S1 and S2. Variables can be correlated by using this grating. You can do optical computing or optical information processing using such a configuration. This is what I meant by saying functional integration in the beginning. So this is an example of an photonic integrated circuit for a sensing application. Here what you see is a top view of a lithium niobate chip onto which you have all these components like a coupler, polarizer, then the modulator. Of course, the single mode waveguides are all fabricated on the same wafer, and the laser input light is outside. We cannot make them on the same chip because this is lithium niobate is not active. It doesn't have the band structure to make lasers and so on. And there is a photodetector side and a lot of electronics, of course, here. So this is for an application to what is called a fiber optic gyroscope. I would just like to briefly mention fiber optic gyroscope is a rotation sensor. If you have put this entire gyroscope on a aircraft or a missile or some rotating object, it can measure the angular velocity very accurately. The basic principle is, see, of course, the coil is the most important part there. You see, the sensing part is the coil. You launch the light in the clockwise direction and counterclockwise direction. And these two beams interfere at this point, creating a phase shift. The phase shift between these two clockwise and anti-clockwise beams is directly proportional to the angular velocity. Delta omega is proportional to delta phi. So that idea is used to make the fiber optic gyroscope. And if you want to realize this, you need all these optical components. You have to divide the power across the two directions. You have to have a single mode operation of the waveguides. You have to phase shift. You have to bias the forward beam or backward beam by 90 degrees so that you are in the linear region and so on. These are all the various applications. You need not worry about the finer details. But the thing is, all these components, if they are made discretely, like in earlier olden days, then this device will become very big. So if you can make all these on a small chip, these are all necessary components, then the gyroscope can be very small. Typically, of course, the coil is not so small. It is typically of the size of some 10 centimeters, like the fiber wound around a tiffin box. Inside the tiffin box, you can put all these integrated optical chip and all the electronics necessary for processing and so on and so forth. It's not so forward. It requires a lot of integration and a lot of system level design and analysis. This is one of the projects that we did long ago in our lab when under my Professor Selvarajan, they have worked on all fiber gyroscope. One of the scientists from DRDO lab, Dr. Jagannath Naik, had worked on this fiber optic gyroscope chip. Fiber optic gyroscope, all fiber gyroscope, only fiber, not integrated optics. Later on, when he did PhD in our department, in our lab, on optical MEMS. But of course, during that time itself, we have a project to design this integrated optical chip. This was done in several other groups like in IRD, Dehradun, IIT Delhi, and many other places. And of course, now RCI Hyderabad is able to fabricate this chip in India. Earlier, they used to import it from Russia or some other places, Israel or somewhere. And now they can make this, and this is going to many of our systems. Okay, for those who are interested, you please talk to Dr. Jagannath Naik. Now he is the director of Center for High Energy Studies of DRDO Labs, and their group has worked on all these things. It's not so straightforward as we discuss in the seminar like this. There were 30 engineers under him, worked for more than 10-15 years to realize this. And we are very happy that one of our activity has gone into a practice. So this is one of the final example called a disk pickup device. Japanese were very much fond of high density storage applications, and they have made a integrated optical circuits to read out all the splits on the optical disc. So it has got a grating, it has got a lot of electronics, of course, and the laser diode and focusing and so on. So the important feature of this device is that the grating is somewhat relief type of grating. It's not in one plane. Okay. This is just as an example. So I would like to show you a few recent developments in photonics and photonic integrated circuits. And some of these are from our activity. Just a minute, please. I hope you are able to see the ring resonators. In between, if there is some problem, please interrupt me. So these are called the ring resonators. One of the important problem in photonic integrated circuits that we have talked until now is the dimensions. All the directional couplers, Y branches, etc. are very, very long, thin and long. Cross sections are of the orders of micrometers and lengths are of the orders of millimeters. And so the modern technology of silicon, the silicon people are very, very unhappy about the structures. They want more compact and more squarish devices. So they talk in terms of the silicon real estate. So you have to use the silicon real estate very effectively. So these ring resonators, integrated optical micro ring resonators, are very important devices in that. And there's an important opportunity here that you have a resonant frequency. They are not based on the intensity or phase shift, unlike electro-optic modulators. They are resonant phenomena. Only one particular wavelength or frequency resonates in this waveguide. So the light can be input across you see there are different configurations. This is called a double bus configuration. There are two bus waveguides and one ring. And there is a small gap between the bus and ring for coupling. So you launch the light through one of these bus waveguides, it resonates, and you can also see the intensity higher inside the ring, and it can come out of the drop port. That is one mode of operation. You can also operate in the forward mode, pass through state, and also you can also add one more frequency through this, and this can resonate, and you can make the properties of this. So basic interest is there's a resonant wavelength. These are all some of the fabricated devices from the literature. And you can also think of arrays of rings, several rings in one row across the rings coupling with the rings, because the coupling from the bus to ring is an important thing. Similarly, coupling between the rings is important here, and a lot of functions can be realized by using these ring resonators. So these are all the various applications of ring resonators, starting from simple delay lines, sensors, communication devices, etc., to up to quantum devices. If you want to implement quantum communication functions also, we can use these integrated optical devices. In between, you have the devices for optical networks, optical signal processing, dispersion compensation, gyroscopes we have seen, and so on. Ring resonators can be used in all these applications. Whatever we have been doing with the directional couplers and interferometers, you can think of doing by ring resonators. So these are a little bit of basics about the ring resonators. Very simple to analyze using a matrix theory. You can match the input and output fields E1, E2, E3, E4, and you can create what is the transmission factor. Transfer function can be given by this. It contains ring radius, the gap between the bus and the coupling, or the gap between the bus and the ring, the size, the various design factors of the ring, like the width of the waveguides and so on and so on, refractive index and so on. So you see, this is the spectrum of the ring. The filter characteristic of the ring is given by this. It resonates at one particular frequency, 1.545 in this particular case. Similarly, 1.555 or something can be another resonant frequency. You can choose according to your requirement. And there are a lot of other interesting properties. In addition to the resonant wavelength, you have a field enhancement factor. You have seen in the previous figure that the field is higher inside the ring. And so there is some other advantage with that. Then you have a free spectral range of the ring. That is the difference or the spacing between the resonant frequencies. Then you have a quality factor. How sharp is the peak is denoted by the quality factor, or even the full width at half maximum. These are all the various properties of the ring, and these are all easily available. There is no complicated mathematics in that, except the coupling between the bus and the ring. Coupling between the bus and ring is a complicated factor because it is not uniform. So another important recent development in photonics is called the photonic bandgap structures. Photonic bandgap structures are periodic structures. I think there is another lecture on photonic bandgap in this in this FDP. So I need not go too much detail into this, but show you some pictures of photonic bandgap structures. They have periodic variation in the refractive index, like this. These dots can be higher refractive index or lower refractive index. That means they can be holes inside the, say suppose you take a, these are all top view what you are seeing. The first one is a grating. You can easily identify where periodic variation in the refractive index, high index, low index, high index, low index, and so on. Similarly, here in the dots, you can have a higher index and lower index, higher index and lower index, or the other way, lower index in this holes and higher index outside. So this is a rectangular configuration. This is a hexagonal configuration or triangular configuration. All sorts of patterns are possible. You can compare photonic bandgap structures with electronic bandgap structures, where you have periodic change in the ionic arrangement, or the electrical potential is periodically varying in that case, and so you have all the conduction bands, valence bands, and so on and so forth. You can also create dopants and create other devices like junctions and so on, like diodes and so on in electronics. Similarly, you can create holes here, or you can fill up the holes creating point defects, or entire row can be deleted to make the line defect, and so on. Those are all will for creating applications you will need those. But before that, this is the spectrum of the photonic bandgap structure. You can see that this particular configuration, square lattice, has got the band gap in this region, in the communication band. All others propagate. And that spectrum depends on the various constants, like the lattice constant, the filling ratio, the refractive index, the polarization of the wave, the direction of propagation. These are all govern what is the spectrum and its properties. So once again, like ring resonators, a lot of applications to optical communications and so on. So this is an example of a 4-channel comb filter that one of our student has worked on this topic. You create a line defect. This is a line defect, and light propagates in that only. Within the band structure, light propagates in this. You can see one of these lines here. Depending on the frequency, the light propagates. And this is a simulator. I would like to mention that there are a lot of freeware on the web. MIT has put on the web their simulators. MIT Photonic Bandgap tool MEP, electromagnetic emulation tool, etc., which can be used to simulate these structures. In this example, you have a bus waveguide, and there are point defects. C1, C2, C3, C4 are point defects which resonate at a particular frequency is required. So, and they can be tapped at the ports D1, D2, D3, and D4. You can see this spectrum. If there are 4 frequencies in the input port, they are tapped at these ports D1, D2, D3, and D4. So these are all the lines corresponding to the propagation of light in across these output ports. So you can say that this is acting as a comb filter or a demultiplexer. This chart, this table will show you various properties like what is the resonant frequency, what is the full width at half maximum, the Q factor, the output variation, and so on and so forth. You can also see that the output is not uniform depending on the frequency and so on. Similarly, one of our students has made a 12-channel comb filter almost on the same principles, but more challenging because they are more closer and so on. So this is a filter characteristic. You can see that all the lines are uniformly distributed here. And you can study the variation of these resonant frequencies with various factors like the refractive index, then so on and so forth. So this spectral sensitivity with the variation. And finally, we can say that 1% change in the refractive index is sufficient. For our practical application, 1% change is sufficient with 0.5% change in the resolved wavelengths. As you know, in communications, you require very closely spaced frequencies like 1.51, 1.511, etc. 1 nanometer. Suppose 1550 is the central wavelength, 1551, 52, 53, etc. are what is needed. 1 nanometer spacing is very hard to get. Of course, nowadays there are a lot of new lasers which can give you very smaller fractions of wavelengths also, which are very useful in WDM applications. Actually, it implies that if you have a small, finer spectral components, you have finer spectral components, you can have more channels packed in the communication band. That is the advantage of more denser WDM. So finally, I would like to go to one more topic called optical MEMS. So here you combine optical components, electronic components, and mechanical components onto a single wafer. This Venn diagram will illustrate what it means. And also, of course, in the miniature form. So this is an example of that free space based optical switch that I was talking in the beginning. People have made using, this is all silicon photonics. As you know, MEMS is very popular in silicon. The VLSI technology has been adapted to MEMS, and VLSI technology has been adapted to MEMS, and a lot of devices can be made on MEMS, including the optical devices. This is an example of a free space optical switches. You have, this is a mirror where this is a flange where you have a reflecting surface here. When the flange is flying flat, the light is not deflected by this mirror. When the flange is up, the light can be reflected. You can configure these mirrors such that you can get any connectivity, any connection from any input ports to any of the output ports. Some of these are active. For example, this is active, is connected to this, and this second port is active and is connected to this port, and so on. You can program such that you can get a good connectivity. Of course, all possible combinations are not possible. All combinations are not possible. And there are a lot of other engineering aspects that people talk about, the switching speeds, then the alignment, and then what is the total delay, and how to make them larger number of ports, like n by n ports, 8 by 8 or 16 by 16 and so on. These are all the various engineering issues. The basic idea is that you can make mirrors in silicon, very small, and you can use them for optical switching and optical networking applications. So generally optical MEMS are categorized in many ways. One is in terms of networking applications, one is in terms of power applications, and these are all the various devices like 1x2 optical switch. Then this mirrors is what I have shown you just now. You can also make variable optical attenuators and so on. So these are all the devices developed by MEMS technology. They are categorized into different types like free space optical switches, waveguide switches, adaptive optical devices, and so on. These are all the various specific devices like micrometers, spectrometers, waveguides, and so on. These are some of the products which have already come into practice. Some companies have made also some products. They are available. So this is one of our work on optical MEMS called pressure sensor, optical MEMS pressure sensor. We have a silicon wafer. These are cross sections what you are seeing. On top of that, you make an interferometer using silicon. See, the silicon waveguide has got this structure. You have a silicon substrate, you have an oxide as another. Of course, this is only supporting, silicon is only supporting, oxide is a substrate, nitride is a waveguide, and on top of that, you have a silicon which will load this nitride, or maybe the light can propagate in this itself. And basically, the light propagates in this interferometric region. This is called an arrow waveguide, anti-resonant reflecting optical waveguide. In this application, we etch out a diaphragm below the arm of the interferometer. These are the two arms of the interferometer. Below this arm of interferometer, you etch out a diaphragm by chemical etching. So that means this can vibrate. And so the refractive index or the length of this waveguide can change. This waveguide is vibrating or changing its length. So there can be phase shift in this, and you can measure it at the output. So this is not changing. These waveguide properties are not changing. If you apply uniform pressure or vibration on top of this, only this waveguide is affected and this is not affected, and you can measure the pressure at the output. So you will have a lot of mathematics corresponding to this. You have to do the analysis of mechanical analysis, and then you have to do optical analysis. You have to relate the mechanical analysis with the optical analysis by elasto-optic effect, and you can study the performance of this. So this is the result. So with applied pressure of the orders of several kilopascals, you have a phase shift of the orders of several radians or microradians. So typically you will require about 100 microradians you can get as the sensitivity per kilopascal. And of course, it depends on the modes, it depends on various factors. So these are some of the design parameters we did. One of our PhD students worked on this long ago. And this under National Program on Smart Materials and Structures. Some of you may be familiar, we have worked on this problem. Of course, the student had done theory, but later on we were able to fabricate it. And of course, there was a lot of coordination with the different labs in the India, like Semiconductor Complex, then IIT Madras, and so on have helped us to fabricate these devices. BL has helped us to make the mask, and so on. So these are some of the references for those who are interested. I hope the lecture has been interesting. I would like to discuss a lot of other things, but depending on your questions. So I will request organizers to coordinate and help us create some discussions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now let's move on to the questionnaire session. If you have any doubts, you may note down in the chat box so that we can ask it one after the other to the speaker. So there is one question.
Yes.
Sir, if we compare normal VLSI IC and photonic IC, what is the level of heat dissipation in photonic IC? As the
Yes.
size decreases, the level of heat dissipation is high in VLSI IC. I would like
Yes.
to know about photonic IC.
Okay. First of all, we cannot compare the level of integration of a VLSI with photonic IC. Photonic ICs have very few components. But if it is a simple component, a functional component like a thermo-optic device, it will have a lot of heat generated. It consumes significant amount of power and a lot of heat is generated. But that is only a very isolated device. As an alternative example, if you have a 8x8 electro-optic switch, it also consumes a certain amount of power, and the power cannot be compared with the VLSI circuit. We are not talking about a chip which goes into a laptop or a cell phone. In future, definitely this is going to be important, and heat dissipation can also be very less. One of the important thing that you must have motivated this question is, see, the optical waveguides, optical fibers are very, very low loss. You must have heard about 0.2 dB per kilometer in optical fibers. In the case of optical waveguides, you have a few dBs per centimeter, not kilometers. So there is certain loss, which means that there is some dissipation, not exactly heat, but the light itself will heat the material. So there is certain amount of heat. We cannot just directly compare those. Functionally, a function is more important. Okay. But of course, power is important. More than the heat, the amount of power that you will apply to the device is also equally important. We have to reduce that power, and it is quite small. We cannot, it's not smaller than VLSI circuits. A few milliwatts is sufficient to
Okay, thank
control.
you.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I have one question. What is the polychromator? Where is it used? Sir?
What is that?
Polychromator. Polychromator. Where is it used?
No, chromator is a device which will allow you to filter out all the frequencies and allow only one frequency. See, polychromator can be called as a device where you get different frequencies at the output, at different ports. You selectively you can choose what are the frequencies in the from the input signal. Monochromator you must have heard, is it not? Monochromator is a device which will make only one frequency. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I hope your doubt is cleared. Now, sir, there is one more question. How
Yes,
can
please.
we analyze the various parameters of micro ring resonators?
Yes, they should be analyzed from the output. As you have seen, there is a spectrum of the output. You have the light through the input port and measure it at the backward port. You have to measure the spectrum. So you have an instrument called spectrum analyzer, which is very much used in communications, optical communication. If you connect the output of a ring resonator to a spectrum analyzer, you get all its characteristics. From the spectrum, you can correlate back to the properties of the ring. What is the radius? What is the spacing? What is the central frequency? And all those things can be analyzed with, where can be correlated with the spring and the output spectrum.
Okay, sir. Hope the doubt is cleared. Now, there is one more question. In comparison to photonic biosensors, plasmonic biosensors is good or bad?
It is good, I can say. It is very popular. One of the important reasons is that propagation constant or the propagation properties of plasmonic devices are very, very sensitive. Very, very sensitive. There is a metal dielectric interface. At the interface of that, you have what is called as plasmonic waves. But you cannot have long length. As you know, when there is a metal, it will absorb. So all the plasmonic devices have very small interaction length. Small interaction length is not convenient for some applications, like amplification. Suppose I want to make an amplifier on the chip, I require a longer interaction length. So that is not possible with plasmonic devices, but they are very sensitive. Sensor applications is very good. Yes. And of course,
Okay,
you cannot,
thank you,
you
sir. Hope the doubt is
alternative
clear.
configurations of waveguides for plasmonic devices. You have to, the principles and the mathematics of plasmonic devices is different from that of normal integrated optical waveguides. So that is, see, the refractive index is complex. That is going to be your main headache when it comes to analyzing plasmonic devices. There are no tools available right now to simulate or analyze, and even not only simulators, the equations also are not well formed for photonic devices. Whereas in the case of integrated optics, there are a lot of commercial tools also now to simulate. There are a lot of freeware on the web, and many of our programs also are available for anyone to use. So the theory of optical waveguides is well understood. The plasmonic device theories are not well understood. Only from some experimental point of view or by very by crude rules of thumb, people are working on those. But of course, the lot of scope is there. Yes, please.
Okay, hope the doubt is cleared. Now, one more question. What kind of optical cavities are used for near infrared sensing?
Okay. So one of the important, you see, it depends. See, we have to look the device from the application point of view. If you want to do infrared sensing, you need to have devices which are sensitive to infrared. For example, you can have a conventional, whatever I have shown, integrated optical device, and top of that you coat a medium which is sensitive to infrared. And of course, you have to design the photonic integrated circuit at infrared frequencies. So you can make use of such a principles to make infrared devices. Yes. Suraj
Okay,
has
sir.
some question.
Now the next question
Suraj
is,
is trying to ask some question. Suraj, you have some question? Yes, please.
okay,
I
sir.
have just
The next
seen.
question is,
Yes.
do photonic integrated circuits influence dense wavelength division multiplexing?
Yes, definitely. They are very, very useful and they are changing the DWDM scenario. You can make devices which have got very, very small spectral lengths, and you can make more and more denser WDM devices. And also a lot of other things like light matter interactions and a lot of new lasers, etc. can be created, and they are very useful for DWDM applications.
Next question is, people
Yes.
usually have a feeling that photonic integrated circuits are better as photons travel with light velocity. In electronics IC, the signals are still EM waves. So how do we really say that PIC have advantages?
Okay. With respect to speed, the speeds are of the same orders of magnitude. Electromagnetic wave frequencies are almost same, except divided by the refractive index. See, if a dielectric constant, suppose let me compare with the refractive index with the dielectric constant. At light frequencies, refractive index, if you square, you get the dielectric constant. If the refractive index is 1.5, then you have the dielectric constant is 2.25. So the velocity, all the electromagnetic waves in free space propagate with 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. In the waveguides, they travel with velocity of light divided by 2.5 or 2.25 or whatever. Now, in the microwave region, the dielectric constants are much larger, sometimes say 100 or whatever you like. But the orders of magnitudes are same. All electromagnetic waves have similar speed of propagation. Whereas in electronic circuits, you have drift velocities of electrons. The signals propagating in electronic wires along the electronic wires and semiconductor junctions are very, very small, of the orders of, say, that's why you have electronic devices which can go up to several megahertz or a few gigahertz. That's all, not more than that. The speeds of electronic devices are that you cannot switch or modulate more than a few gigahertz. Whereas optical signals, as you know, all the phenomena in optics are at the interface of those energy levels. If you take a material, it has got valence bands and conduction bands, and the laser signals are generated by transitions across these bands, and these are very, very fast, orders of several terahertz or hundreds of terahertz. That's why you have photonic devices very high speed. Not because of the electromagnetic velocity. See, the signals are propagating with electromagnetic velocity or as a transmission lines on the electronic circuits, and as electromagnetic waves in optical waveguides. The speeds are same, but the overall device switching speeds and operating speeds are totally different. That's how you are getting the bandwidth advantage, not because of the electromagnetic waves in circuits and light waves in this. Both are almost similar order. I hope you look at that in that point of view. Yes, please. So the advantage is coming because of the transitions between the energy levels in materials. You have femtosecond lasers, very sharp lasers, very fast switching lasers because of this quantum. These are all quantum phenomena, not simply circuit phenomena.
Okay, sir. The question was asked by Dr. Suraj Revindran. Sir,
Yeah, I know. He
hope the
already knows
doubt
that.
is cleared.
He already knows. He wants to see what is my view or my approach to that problem.
Okay, the next question is, are photonic crystal based optical devices good for infrared sensing?
Yes, definitely. See, we have to see the band of operation of these silicon photonics. As you know, presently all these photonic band gap structures are based on silicon. Silicon has got a certain band. Infrared is more suitable on silicon. So all these devices are at silicon. If you want to have some other band, and also if you want to make active devices, we have to go for active materials like indium phosphide or whatever you like. So depending on the application, these, of course, definitely you can say photonic band gaps. Of course, the dimensions are not so different. If instead of 1.5 microns, it can be 1 micron or 2 microns. If you are within the IR, UV, and the visible range, the orders of magnitude is same. But if you are going to apply these photonic band gaps in the millimeter wave range, etc., for the 5G and those applications, they are, of course, once again electromagnetic waves, but the dimensions are different. I hope some of you know that these photonic band gap structures or electronic band gap structures are used in antenna applications. In the ground plane, you have these photonic band gap structure, and they will control the properties of these antennas or waveguides or transmission lines. So they are limited by only the technology, not by the principle. So you can create photonic band gap structures at any frequency. You can design at any frequency.
Sir, next question is, what is the difference
Yes.
between discrete circuits and integrated circuits? Can we fit multiple
Okay.
discrete circuits on one plate of semiconductor material and make it an integrated circuit?
This is called hybrid integration. We will not be able to make all the components on the same substrate because of different properties. Some device will require electro-optic property. Some other device will require nonlinear property, etc. So it is not convenient to make all on one substrate. Particularly the laser is difficult to make in silicon. It's not possible virtually. So we have to combine. That is called a hybrid integration. And of course, you can also combine electronic circuits to control these also on the same silicon substrate. So, I mean, I'm not saying just fixing. The fabricating on the same substrate. One region of the silicon can be optical circuit, one region can be electronic circuit on the same plane. It is possible. But at this moment, as you know, electronics has far advanced, and you can directly bond a chip to a silicon photonic circuit. Yes, please.
Okay, sir, the last question. How is it possible to generate a single photon from a beam of light? Is there any photonic crystal commercially available to generate a single photon?
That's a different topic altogether. Of course, it's a very interesting topic to generate single photon sources. That's an important requirement in quantum applications, and it is possible to use photonic devices, integrated photonic devices, to create single photon sources. You have to use the nonlinear effects in the crystal, and you can also do a lot of cutting down the frequency or limiting, etc., to create single photon sources. So for the time being, without using much mathematics, I cannot explain beyond that. But I can say it is possible. It will be possible to have single photon sources based on photonic circuits.
Okay, sir. Now it's time to wind up the session. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Srinivas for an excellent presentation. Your years of research, your ability to present the subject in such an interesting manner is really appreciable. I would
Yeah,
like
thank
to
you very
thank
much
you
once
on
again.
behalf of all.
Yeah, I would like to make a
Like
final
to
comment.
thank you.
So maybe let me make a final comment. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this FDP, and I would also suggest, I hope most of you would have liked this subject, and if you want to go more and more details of this, you have to go to the current literature. There are a lot of very good books, a lot of review papers and journals. If you want to go deeper into this, and particularly for those who want to do research in this subject, it's a very fertile field. A lot of tools are available. This community is small in India and also all over the world. It is growing, but the community is small, so it will be very useful to interact with your colleagues or other people working in this subject. And I would suggest those who are interested to read the journals of IEEE Photonics Society. And I hope many of you know, someone would have already described, IEEE Photonics Society deals with all these topics, not only this, many other photonics related topics. And I was talking to Dr. Suraj and others that we would like to have a Photonics Society chapter of Kerala. So I hope Suraj will make a comment later sometime whenever it is possible, or the organizers, to see the interest of the participants. If the participants are interested, we can form the Photonic Society chapter of Kerala. So for further information, please someone be in touch with me, the organizers, and we can take up further. Thank you very much for listening again.
Okay, thank you, sir.
No.
Maybe I would request
No,
the
I would
organizers
like to
to
thank
give
you.
Suraj a opportunity to make a statement.
So can I make one comment, sir? Hello.
Yes, please.
So we already have a Photonic Society of India. I think ISP QSAT. We are all members of that actually.
I know
Photonic
about
Society
that.
of India, PSA. Yeah.
No, no,
So
there
we
is
can, I
nothing like
think.
Photonic Society. See, I'm talking about IEEE Photonic Society because we need to compete
Okay.
internationally. See, I know about Laser
Okay.
Society, Photonic Society of QSAT. Hmm?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Mangalam College has got a IEEE Photonic Society, I know. Recently, they are very, very
Okay.
active. Dr. Subhash and others have formed it. But there is no Photonic Society chapter for Kerala as a whole. We have Photonic Society chapter of Hyderabad for Bangalore section, for Chennai section, and Calcutta section, etc., but not for Kerala. Someone else will later make a statement. So
Okay.
there are some members who are interested. Of course, we need a very few members, 12 members to form the Photonic Society of Kerala. Lot of advantages. Yes, please. If someone wants, they can ask me a
Okay,
question on
thank you, sir.
Photonic Society.
Hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much for your interest and attention. I would like to thank you on behalf of all the members present here, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now, the next session will start soon at 11:45. Hope all the participants would join at the scheduled time itself. And this brings us to the end of first session. We'll be back soon.
Are you using the same link?